A lot of talk about Arthur lately. They're saying that he can be a serious damage dealer, even comparable to Kay, as long as you have him with his 8th Chivalry. And I wanted to go test that, so we went on stream today. We got him to his 8th Chivalry, and we tried this out. Now, the 8th Chivalry says, hit 1 additional time upon critical strike. What does that mean? Does that mean you do the same hit again? Does that mean that there's a fixed value of a hit? Does that mean that you do like some kind of crazy additional hit? It should say a value here. They need to put like 100% attack, because that's basically what it is. It looks like it's somewhere around 100% additional attack. So it doesn't matter if you do his skill 1 and get 2 little hits, or you do his skill 3 and get a really large hit. It's not based off of the damage you're doing. It's going to be a fixed value. So if you do a big hit and say you hit for 10,000, you're only going to get an additional hit around 1,300 to 1,500. And that's not really a huge increase if you're spending 3 vigor and you're doing whatever damage you're doing. That's not a big increase. Now, if we do a skill 1, it's really low damage. And then we get this nice little nuke afterwards. But keep in mind, we have to crit. And Arthur's not good with crit. He's got a crit rate buff that he gets for 1 turn, and it goes on cooldown for 2 turns. So until that 3rd turn, it comes back up, and again, you get it for 1 turn. You got to put crit on him. You got to load him up with crit. So I leveled him up. We've got him here in a crit rate set. He's got a 70% chance to crit. When that crit rate buff is not on him, we still need to crit so we can get that additional hit, because we've got to crit for that Chivalry 8 and see how good it is. See if it actually elevates this guy, because without that Chivalry 8, he's A tier at best. He's just not good. He's not doing anywhere near the damage as Kay. He's not low vigor cost like Kay is if we just want to do her S2 over and over for 2 vigor. He doesn't get the buffs she gets. He gets a crit rate buff that's barely even up, so we have to invest crit into him. And then his multipliers are standard. He has 56 on this base one. We've got 112 on this S2 for a single target. And then here we have 216 for a single target for 3 vigor. Now, if we compare that to somebody else who does damage, Anguish, he's got a 3 vigor cost 180. 216 versus 180, but Anguish puts up dots. So it's not a crazy, it's not more damage. It's just basic. And Arthur isn't really pulling in anything else. The only thing about Arthur that is cool is that he gets a critical damage buff of, I believe, 90%. If it's critical damage 3, it's 90%. If it's critical damage 2, it's 60%. He gets that for the first round, unless you have his passive maxed out. If you have it maxed out, I think you get it for 3 rounds. So for 3 rounds, he can go hard with that critical damage buff, as long as you have crit rate on him, because he's not going to have a crit rate buff to keep hitting those critical hits. And if you're doing a long fight on something like Bear, it's going to fall off in 3 rounds. Bear's a long fight. You're not even worried about that critical damage buff then when it starts. It'd have to be something you go in and you nuke. He does have a wind weapon that's pretty cool against Frost. This hits much harder than any of his other skills, but it's only if you're dealing damage to Frost. It's like 100% additional attack. That is pretty cool, but we don't need Chivalry 8 to make that good. This is good on its own. It's doing a lot of additional damage on its own against a Frost enemy. We're going to go over here to the codec. We've got a crit rate buff right when we start, and we got that critical damage buff for 3 turns, but we lose that crit rate buff right after. Now it's gone. We did the skill 1, and we had a chance to get that attack buff of 20%. We got it. Now we've got this critical damage buff and attack buff on us, but we've got no crit. So more than likely, he's not going to crit, and then now we don't take advantage of that Chivalry 8. So Chivalry 8, again, does not change Arthur into making him some kind of beast. He wasn't a beast before. I don't think he's a beast now. It doesn't do any good. Now we have to go, that's 1 turn without a crit rate buff, 2nd turn without a crit rate buff. Now we get a crit rate buff for only 1 turn. I have no idea why this guy, even with skills put into the passive, only gets a crit rate buff for 1 turn. It should be 2 turns of crit rate, 1 turn without it, and then we get the 2 turns again. But having it 1 turn, 2 turns with nothing, that means we got to gear him straight up crit. We're not taking advantage of the Chivalry if we don't crit, and we're not taking advantage of that critical damage buff he's got. But say we do a longer fight, that critical damage buff falls off after 3 turns. Now we're stuck with no buffs. We only get these buffs because we're doing a skill 1 over and over. No buffs, we're just sitting here hitting, and we're waiting for that critical crit rate buff to come back on. It comes back on that 3rd turn for 1 turn only. Now we can go over here and do some damage, right? Only because it's a skill 3. It's the 218 multiplier, And then this one, if we attack somebody that's frost, is going to hit for more than that. Now remember, this is skilled. So it's got points into the skill, so it's making it much higher for the attack percentage. Instead of 218, it's 383. And we still get the 32% per hit extra, which adds up to about 100% additional damage. So 483 is really good on its own. That's good damage right here. We can see that's nice damage, but even when we crit with Chivalry, it just adds a fraction of what it is to it. So Chivalry isn't making him good. It's making him better. Critting for around 4,000 each, that'd be 12,000 damage. And we add that 1,300 or 1,400 to it. It's a little extra. It's nice. It's nice to have. I'm not saying don't have it. We want more damage. We always want damage, but it's not making this guy good. And the other sad thing about this is when we do an AoE ability, it doesn't hit everybody. If we crit hit on an AoE ability, they don't all take additional damage, which is really unfortunate. Only 1 out of 3 or 4 or 5, however many you're hitting, it's only ever going to be one person taking additional damage. So it's not changing. Like Chivalry 8 is not changing his profile when he does AoE. Not really. It's just giving one person a little extra damage. And of course, you have to crit with it for it to be able to do that. Now I'm going to go over to Bear and show you just his damage really quick. Just to show you that he is interesting with that skill 3, with the wind weapon that everyone gets. As far as all his other things, you just cannot convince me that he's good. I do not think Arthur's good. I don't think you should ever invest in him, if I can figure out where I'm going. And let me know if you think otherwise. I don't know why people are saying that they think Arthur now with Chivalry 8 is on par with any damage dealers. I don't agree. I think that if it's other damage dealers doing less damage, they actually have a reason for being in there. Because if I come in here with Alkalon, he's heal blocking. He might do less damage than Arthur, but he's here for a purpose. I would just bring in Kay to do her skill 2 over and over to get massive damage because we just did a video on her. You know how much damage she can do. She can outperform him easily just by doing 2 vigor cost, where he always has to do a 3 vigor cost just to make this wind relic look good. And we're going to hit the bear with that 3 vigor cost right now so you can see what it looks like. So here we go. We've got Kay coming in. She's going to hit this foot. It's good damage, and Kay ramps up. We do that again, it's going to do even more damage with Kay because we're going to get another crit rate and critical damage buff on her. It's going to keep ramping up. With Arthur, we got to spend 3 vigor, which is sometimes hard to do on a team. You have to have everybody else in a vigor set, which you do probably want. And then we could pull off his skill 3 pretty often. And it's nice damage along with that additional 1,500. But again, Chivalry isn't really changing that profile. It's not changing that damage profile because it's not based off of the damage, the overall damage he's doing. It's just based off of that one fixed amount for an additional hit. Or I could come in and hit with his skill 1 and do a little hit and then get a bigger additional hit. You saw that? So we had 600, 600, and then we got that 1,000 extra. So if I had Arthur with enough crit and a vigor set or enough crit and just had him come through and just do a skill 1, not even with a vigor set, we would still gain a little vigor for other people. And he could be here just doing a skill 1. Skill 1, trying to get that attack increase of 20%, doing decent damage. But you're going to bring in someone else. You're going to bring in somebody that makes sense for the encounter that we're fighting. Let me know how you're using Arthur. Let me know if you disagree.